Welcome to the talk about gamification behind the buzz. First of all, I'd like to ask you guys, how do you feel? Do you feel like professional IT developers? Then I think that the GOTO conference has actually managed to, in some sense, gamify the conference. Because that's what gamification to me is all about. It's about emotion. I'll get back to that in a little while. So first of all, who am I? And who do I represent? So my name is Lars Kroll, and I'm the development director of Unity Studios. We are a company that is based here in Aarhus. So I'm a local guy. We have a mission to proliferate the use of 3D, particularly real-time 3D and particularly interactive 3D. That's what we do. That's what we love to do. So we do work for hire. We're about 30 guys working on this. We also we work with an engine called Unity. We have a booth down there at the stand, and I recommend that you come by and look at some of the stuff we have there. We have some pretty cool stuff to show off. So what we really love to do at Unity Studios is to make 3D experiences. And 3D experiences is basically the shortest way we can put it. It captures that it's about 3D. It captures that it's interactive, I think, because otherwise I think it's a sort of weak experience if it's not interactive. Therefore, it also needs to be real-time 3D. And that basically, one way of doing that is, of course, to make games. So we have made a few games. All of the stuff I'm showing here is stuff we've done through the time. Some of it is our own games. Some of it is games we've done for other parties. And some of it is has nothing to do with games. But Unity and the 3D experiences runs through everything we do. And that turns out that I heard this word gamification some time ago, and I heard an explanation about what it was, and I went like, "Hey, that's what we're doing." And I figured out that we'd actually been doing gamification for a while without really realizing it. So what is it? What is gamification to me? There's a lot of definitions floating around out there. I am luckily not in academia anymore, so I have the liberty of ignoring definitions or making up my own as it pleases me. So that's what I did. So for me, gamification is taking user experience to the next level. It's about adding an emotional content and an emotional context to the applications we built. So what do I mean about this? What do I mean with this emotional content, emotional context? Some of you might be familiar with the technique of personas. Raise of hand if you know what a persona is. Okay, so about half the audience. I'll have to talk a little bit about what a persona is then. So the idea with a persona design approach is that you come up with some fictional persons during your design process that are your sort of target persons. I am building this game for Alice, Bob, and Charlie, and Alice is so and so, and Bob is so and so, and Charlie is like this. And whenever you take a design decision, or whenever you have a design, thought, something you consider to add to your design or remove from your design, you also ask yourself the question: how would Alice, Bob, and Charlie feel about this addition to the design? Would they like it? And then, with a bit of luck, and if you know what you're doing, if you're good at what you're doing, you end up building an application that is well suited for Alice, Bob, and Charlie, which is great. Now, to me, gamification is, to some extent, an inverse process. It's a process of basically saying, okay, so I have this particular emotion that I want my players to feel, or this role that I want them to feel like. I want my players to feel like something. And then I make various decisions, various design decisions, based on that goal. I want my players to feel like something. And that is pretty much what game design is all about. So to me, gamification is to some extent about using game technology, but it's also very much about using game techniques, game design techniques in your work, in your design work. So that's just to explain what I feel is gamification. And the rest of this talk is pretty much exemplifying more about this. So this is a case we did. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who were here yesterday at my talk, there will be a little bit of reuse of slides, but the words are going to be a little bit different this time. So this is these are promotional images by a company called VELUX. They sell windows. Well, that's what you think they sell anyway. What they told us they sell is they sell light, and it kind of makes sense because, you know, especially when you put in a window in the attic of a room, what you want from that, what your goal with that is to let in more light to your room, and then the window is just there to, you know, prevent the rain from coming in and stuff like that. So VELUX of course promotes their products, and they do that with pictures like these, which is fine. These again are pictures that, you know, the marketing business are very good at making the person that watches something feel in a particular way. These pictures, of course, convey some of that emotion that VELUX wants to convey around their products and their brand. But the problem with this particular way of showing off the product is you can't see what does this do to your room. And this is where it gets interesting again with VELUX's view of what they do is they sell light. Because it's not about the window. We don't focus exactly on the window here. It's not about how good is the quality and so on. You know, well, it's also about that. But it's mostly about what does the addition of the window do to this room. And okay, we can show it in this room, but how about showing it for your room, for the end user's room? So that's what VELUX wanted to do. So in short, they basically asked us to make an application that makes the end user feel like an architect. Anyway, that's what we came up with after having talked about it for a while, and some coffee was involved as well. But we wanted basically an application that makes the end user feel like an architect. You know, it's difficult for most people to look at a room and go, if I put a window in there, the light is going to be really amazing and cool in here. Architects can do that. Most other people, not so much. But so we wanted to make a tool, well, VELUX wanted us to make a tool that would help the end user get that inspiration and get that feeling, all the while feeling like an architect. So we made this. So this is running in a web player. It's a couple of years old, so it might look a little bit dated. VELUX was very particular about the light simulation being done extremely well, so we had a lot of technical challenges with this. I'm not going to talk so much about that. I'm going to talk about the design and the way that everything is put together here. It was important for VELUX, and actually incidentally also for us, that that it was really simple to use, so that, you know, everybody who actually browsed to that web page would be able to do something relatively easily. So we put a lot of effort into making it easy to use and making it efficient to use and solving that case. It was also important for VELUX that there was this brand quality, this sense of this feels nice, this feels cool, this feels glossy and looks good and is high quality light and so on, because that reflects, of course, on the VELUX brand. So that was important for them. And on top of that, we wanted this to feel, you know, we wanted, as I said, the user to feel like an architect while they were toying around with the application. So this is why the visual design, looks the way it looks. This is why everything. This is why there's very very little color. Why everything looks like a drawing. Why everything except, I should say, the light, which was very important for VELUX to get right, is all designed to help the user get that experience get that feeling of I am an architect. Another thing we know about 3D, being people that work with 3D ourselves all the time, is it's pretty hard to grasp. It's pretty difficult. It's surprisingly difficult actually to make a good 3D editor. People have been spending a lot of time on that, and it's still not particularly intuitive how to work with a full 3D editor. So it was a very big deal for us to try and make something where you could, as an end user, have an editor experience and have some amount of freedom in building stuff, while on the other hand, still feeling like you know what you're doing. This is easy for me to do. Again, also because if the end user feels that this playing around with building a virtual room and putting in a virtual window and so on, if that feels easy, then by extension it probably also is easy to phone up a carpenter and actually do it. Now, whether that's true or not is a different story. So, as I said, 3D is hard to grasp. It's difficult to work with, and this is just not a solution anymore. The solution being read the fucking manual is not a solution anymore. You can no longer get away with just, okay, I have a difficult program to use, I'll give the end users a manual. I would posit that if you are delivering a product to end users and you need to actually include a manual in that product, then you've messed up. And you need to look at your design again, and you need to make sure you don't need a manual. But still, you need to teach people how to use the application. That is a given. That is also true for games. Many games these days are actually quite difficult and quite complex and quite complicated creatures. You basically need to teach people how to use them. The way we do it in games is we do a tutorial. So a tutorial levels are basically dead easy levels that you cannot possibly fail in, where some character, some entity in the game asks you to do certain things. Jump over this, jump through this hoop, please, in order to save the princess or whatever. I actually would have liked for us to actually have a character go through this narrative that we designed for the VELUX case. So we designed a narrative for the VELUX case where we basically, take the user by the hand and guide them through the experience of building a particular building. We could probably have, it's hard to say. We might have been able to make it more effective by sort of having a character that asked for the help of the user and rewarded the user with a nice thank you at the end of the walkthrough. I'm not sure, because on the other hand, that might to some people feel too too gamey and too non-architecty, basically. So we fell back to the original vision, which was make something that makes the user feel like an architect. So therefore, it's more like a set of instructions that leads the user through a building experience. But the important point is, or the core of this is that it's basically all about the emotional context. Now, some of you may start to say, "Oh, it's beginning to sound religious and so on." So I would like to sort of, point out the possibly obvious, but anyway, I'm going to point it out anyway, that an application that you're building, an application that solves something, that is a tool or that solves some sort of task, needs, of course, to be efficient. This is almost a Maslowian pyramid of needs. At the very bottom is it needs to be efficient. Your tool needs to do whatever it is it's doing in an efficient way, and preferably the most efficient way in the world. Preferably, you have to be more efficient at what you're doing than the next guy around there. When you got that sorted and you know what you're doing on that part, then you start looking at ease of use. It also has to be easy to use. The ease of use cannot compromise the efficiency. It has to be built on top of the efficiency. So a good example of that is if you're building a very easy to use programming language, which is very, very easy to use because it doesn't have any loops, for instance. It does make it easier to use, but it also imposes a wall that makes it less efficient, less usable. So fix the efficiency first, then fix the ease of use. Then it needs to be pretty. And this is actually something I think has changed over the past maybe, 5-10 years or something. Back in the day, nobody cared that all applications were gunmetal gray and everything looked horrible, basically. But now people actually care quite a lot that applications are pretty. This, of course, has been true for games also for a long time. I think that what comes on top of that is this emotional content I'm talking about. But again, the prettiness and the emotional context can only be built on top of the other stuff and must never be at the cost of the other stuff. The other stuff is still more important. So to me, gamification lives up there in the top, in the emotional part. And what's interesting also about this emotional content and context I was talking about is that this adding of emotion, this if you will, manipulation of the end user and manipulation of the end user's emotions to make the end user feel something particular that you want the end user to feel, is there are a group of domain experts out there, and those are game developers and especially game designers. Now I'm going to take you somewhere else, because the emotions you want people to feel aren't always pretty. You may actually have some good reasons to want to make people feel something else. So this image is this is a ship called Costa Concordia. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard about this. A number of people died during this when this ship sunk, and the reason it sunk was because of horrible risk management and very bad leadership aboard the ship. We were part of a research effort called Team Safety. This was a project that actually started way before Costa Concordia, and Costa Concordia happened during this project. It was sort of a humbling experience for me to work on this project, because as I have seen myself as a game developer for a long time, but suddenly I found myself working on something that actually saved lives, which was nice. Well, I haven't as such saved lives, but which actually attempted to save lives rather than just kill time. And that was a nice experience, but also a humbling experience. So the idea with Team Safety was to build a multi-user application, a simulation, a multiplayer game, if you will, in which the trainees, the users, players, if you will, were the crew, the deck crew, and the bridge crew of a passenger ship. So that was, of course, the emotion we wanted to put into people. We wanted to let them to make them feel like these characters. We wanted to make them feel like the deck crew, the bridge crew, and also the sort of service crew of a passenger ship. Now, that was quite easy because our users were, in fact, bridge crew, cabin crew, and deck crew of a passenger ship. But that was also sort of the challenge, because we were going to put that emotion into them in a virtual world. So that meant that we had to replicate that virtual world in a pretty high fidelity for it to feel right for the for the for the crew. Also, as I said, it was about safety training. So this multi-user application also had some bad stuff happening during the exercise or during the simulation. A fire will break out at the car deck, and it is the job of the crew to fight the fire and to evacuate the passengers if it gets as bad as that, and to coordinate those efforts also from the bridge, and do all that in accordance with the safety protocols aboard the particular ship. And this is something that it turns out is actually quite difficult and quite expensive for the ship lines to actually do this kind of training. So they only do what they really have to. So the idea here was to do it in a virtual environment and thereby cut the costs dramatically, because you didn't have to park the ferry, which is really expensive. Now, in such a situation, the great enemies apart from stupidity is these emotions. So stress, confusion, panic, fear. As I said before, it's not always about making the user feel something nice and fluffy. In this case, it was our job to try and induce as much stress, confusion, and panic and fear into our users as we could. And it was also our job to give the instructor a tool to help him, dial up stress, confusion, and panic and fear as he pleased, as he needed, in order for him to sort of also dial up the amount of pressure he would put on the crew. So the instructor was able to join in on this simulation, and he could do all kinds of stuff. He could put fire on the ship. He could put out fires on the ship. He could set off false alarms. He could block doors. He could even possess the non-player characters, the AI-controlled non-player characters, the passengers, and become an obnoxious passenger. Basically, I will not leave this ferry until I have my wife by my side. Help me find my wife. And this is the kind of thing that can, again, add to all of these negative emotions. So we don't want to put these negative emotions on people because we're mean. We want to put them on people, on the bridge crew, so that they are prepared for these emotions. And so that they can sort of figure out, how do I react, and just as importantly, how do my teammates react under these circumstances? And how does our communication break down or function under these circumstances? So that was the goal with team safety. And it ended up looking like this. Oops. This is also a demo that we have down at the booth, so you can come have a look at it. One of the things we also did during that project was to add VR goggles to the project in order to sort of add to the immersion level. Unfortunately, the Oculus VR hadn't come out around the time of this project, but afterwards we also ported this to Oculus, and that actually made a difference, because that actually made it feel much more immersive, and thus easier for us as game developers or as application developers to sort of imbue this sense of panic, confusion, and fear that we wanted. And by the way, some of you might be sitting here thinking, okay, but this is just a serious game, isn't it? And maybe you're right. I don't know. That it doesn't really bother me, because I also think that serious games is gamification of something. In this case, gamification of training. It could also be gamification of education, or gamification of maybe even news coverage. Who knows? So, enough about team safety. Now the next case I want to talk about is Autostadt. So Autostadt is a sort of a theme park for Volkswagen in Wolfsburg in Germany. It is a place for Volkswagen to show off their brand. It's also a place for end consumers to come and experience that brand and to come and experience some of the things that Volkswagen either have produced or are the values that Volkswagen wants to project to the world. It's also a place where you can sit and have a sauerkraut while you're waiting for your car to actually literally run off the end of the assembly line. So it's a pretty cool place. They have right down here somewhere, I think in that building right there, there's an installation or a set of installations called Mobi, which is about mobility, not mobility as in mobile phones, but mobility as in driving around in a car. And one of this set of installations was made by an architect company called Hosoya Schäfer. They had a long-term relationship with another company called Shift Control, and they wanted to sort of invite us into this collaboration, working with them, because they came up with an idea and they said, this Kinect thing, that sounds cool. So is anybody in here not familiar with Kinect? Wow, everybody knows what a Kinect is. Great, awesome. I'll explain it anyway. It's a device, it's an input device basically that records the movements of the user. So their thinking was, how about if we integrate a Kinect into one of these installations? They already had something with touch screens and so on. Could we do that? And we were like, well, sounds cool. Kinect is cool. It's a cool technology. We like to work with cool technologies. We knew there was a nice integration with Unity, so the technology part of it sounded interesting. But it was also very important for us, and this was early days with our cooperation with Hosoya Schäfer, so we weren't sure. I just wanted to make sure that they had seen a few examples of how not to use Kinect. So I showed them this and said, let's not do this. I usually don't diss other people's projects in public, but in this case I will make an exception. This is an actual game that came out in I don't know when, based on Kinect. So this is from the time when everybody was flocking to Kinect and going, oh, let's make a Kinect game because Kinect is cool. And then they hire a guy like this to enthusiastically demonstrate how cool this game is, and he obviously doesn't even believe it. And why doesn't he believe it? Now, he doesn't believe it because he doesn't feel like a jockey. He feels like an idiot. So it was important for me to show this to Hosoya Schäfer and go, guys, let's not do this, right? Let's do something else. Let's be a little bit smarter about this. Let's be very clear about what kind of emotion is it we want. And what we want is this. And I'm not talking about the usability part of this, because I know that in usability circles, this movie Minority Report is being dissed by a lot of people. So I'm not talking about the usability part of this. I'd like to be very clear about that. I'm talking about the emotional part of this. I'm talking about Tom Cruise standing right there, looking manly, gesturing in very assertive ways, and obviously feeling extremely cool about himself. That's what we want. And the reason it's extra important for this Mobi installation, as I said, this is a public place. This is sort of a theme park. There's a lot of people coming there. We're already asking people a lot when we're asking them to feel confident in trying to interact with something where they don't exactly understand what it is they interact with. because they just see that the screen reacts to their movement. So it was hard enough to make that intuitive and easy to use. But if we, on top of that, also made people feel like idiots or feel uncomfortable while they were doing this, they would not leave with a good experience. So therefore, it was very important for us that the motions you used felt right and made you feel like, Tom Cruise in Minority Report. So this is not Tom Cruise in Minority Report, but close. This is actually one of our developers at the time. So notice the way that the movie is now pausing. Why is that happening? Okay. Notice the way that the application actually reacts to him walking up to it automatically. That just happens. And you can see down in the right corner of the screen, you can see there's a white outline that shows how he moves. This is our way of telling the user, we can see you. We can see you move. So that's sort of a hint at doing what you want to do. And now notice the movements he's making. He's pointing, and he's assertively he's moving his hands. It feels natural when you stand there. It looks easy. Believe me, it was not. It was very, very difficult to get the calibration and everything for the Kinect right. This is something we worked on for a long time. The huge screen thing was easy in comparison, but the huge screen thing itself is actually also part of this experience of feeling cool. Making you feel like this is pretty cool. This is actually wow, is that possible? Behind that wall there is a room in which there's a pretty big computer with a pretty big graphics card. Actually, quite a lot of big graphics card that runs the rendering that goes into this huge screen, and that isn't interesting to show off. And then below it, there's the Kinect, which is sort of a very, very, very cheap device actually, which is actually the thing that's running the whole experience. Is crucial kingpin technology for this entire experience. That, and of course, the design. Now, the final thing. How am I for time? Perfect. So the final thing I want to talk a little bit about is Scrum. And now it starts to get a little bit weird. Why am I talking about Scrum now? What does Scrum have to do with gamification? Well, I would posit that Scrum, in some senses, is a gamified process. And I'd like you to think a little bit about that when you go home to your companies. Maybe it's not just about the products. Maybe gamification isn't just about the products. Maybe it's also about the process. So Scrum, as most of you know, I haven't even asked if everybody is familiar with Scrum. I will just assume that. So, as most of you know, Scrum has had a very big impact on software development, and generally it's met with a little bit of skepticism. It's a sort of a circus thing, but then after a while, people actually enjoy it and like to use it. Then it's also efficient, and there's a lot of smart things you do. Now, an example of what I'm talking about is the Scrum board. So the Scrum board, it makes sense to have somewhere common where you can actually look at what you need to do in the backlog, what you're working on right now, and what you've done already. That makes sense. That's usable. This is about efficiency. It makes sense. Well, we're not really there where we're making pretty Scrum boards. But we are there where every day we meet around our Scrum board. Again, partly this is about efficiency and about utility, but there's also a very satisfying feeling in this act of moving, a post-it note from in progress to done. That just feels nice. This feels good. And if you look at the Scrum board over, the course of your sprint, you'll see all the tasks moving from backlog to in progress to done. It's a scoreboard. It's a high score. It's progression. It shows you you're going places. It shows you that what you're doing actually works and actually has a positive consequence. It shows that in a very obvious way. To me, the Scrum board is partly very, very practical, very, very useful, very, very efficient, but it's also a high score. It's a level. It's rewards, which is something that's good in gamification. Planning poker, formal set of gamish rules, which has, again, some efficiency aspects of it, but which is also just fun. Well, okay, it gets old at some stage, of course, but there is something pleasant and nice about having these. And to me, I think that's actually a serious reason why Scrum has succeeded as well as it has, because not only does it actually do something efficient and smart and well, which is very, very important, and which is the primary reason, it also feels nice. Maybe if there was a process that was as efficient as Scrum, but just not as pleasant to use, I doubt that it would have been successful. So, does that mean that I advocate gamification everywhere? Again, as I said, I don't normally diss other people's projects. In this case, I will also make an exception. This is the fabulous product, the 3D mailbox, which I think is from the mid-90s or something. I'm honestly not 100% sure what the hell is going on here, but I think that the hot women are emails and the fat guys are spam, and I think that the shark is a spam filter. Now, how that in any way enhances, anything in your life, I don't know. But somebody came up with this at some stage and felt that this was just, yay, 3D makes everything better. This is coming from a guy that does, interactive 3D for a living. I would love to be able to say that 3D makes everything better, but clearly it doesn't. So again, use with caution. And basically, I would say that that's game over. Unless, of course, there are some questions, which I suppose you've had time to, text me questions and so on. But
any examples that does involve 3D gamifications where you apply gamification?
Scrum?
Yeah. For products, software products.
Can I come up with examples of that? I'm sure there are examples out there. I know that there are companies out there that label themselves as gamification experts by saying, we'll make sure that your users get rewards and stuff. I guess in principle, when you have sort of a stamp sheet, the stamp sheet thing we have going on here at the GOTO conference, go around to everybody, get a stamp, and then you can win something. To some people, that would be gamification. To me, if it was fun doing it, then yes, it would be gamification. And to me, I think that's probably the thing that sometimes, well, not even fun. If it gave me an emotion, while I was doing this, if that made me feel more like a software developer, right? Then cool, excellent, wonderful. Then I would call it gamification. As it is now, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't feel that it's very good gamification anyway. But I don't think that's the point of it anyway. I think the point of it from the GOTO conference's point of view is to, get everybody out and looking at all the booths, and that works. So, yeah. For some games, winning is absolutely, the essential thing to do. But there is this this cliche that it's not about winning; it's about playing the game, or it's about being part of it. What is it in Danish? It's det gælder om at være med, ikke om at vinde. It's about being part of it, not winning. In some games, particularly computer games, where you can have adversaries that are computer controlled, it makes actually a lot of sense to have collaborative games, and a lot of games are collaborative games. So, winning plays a part in competitive player versus player games, but it's not the only way to make a good game.
In the case of VELUX, you told us that you were thinking about having an avatar or animated person to tutorial the user how to use the system.
Yes.
These days, there's a lot of talk about happy design as well, and bright colors and creating positive emotions. How do you see that in comparison to being very conservative and having that professional look? How far can you take that?
Well, I think it depends extremely much on your application. So if you're building a tool for database managers, for instance, they would probably analyze your audience. But my guess offhand, without being 100% sure and without wanting to insult anybody, I think that database programmers would prefer something that is down to earth and makes them feel efficient and professional, more than something that makes them feel happy. It's not about, as I said, it's not always about making the user feel happy. It might as well be about making the user feel professional, make the user feel, in this case, like a software developer, make the user feel efficient can be maybe enough sometimes, right? As an example, when I bought my previous phone, the one before the one I have now, well, actually the one before the one I have now, I got a very big box, and I got my little feature phone with a lot of buttons on it, and I got this big fat manual, and I was looking at it, I was feeling like, I can't be bothered to read all this, and that also meant that I felt like an idiot for the first long time while I used that phone. And eventually I figured it out, and I probably figured out about 10% of the functionality of that phone, and I was happy with it. When I bought my next phone, I bought an iPhone, and the box was glossy and cool and nice. And I open it, and there's my phone, and it looks cool and it looks nice. And I pick it up, and there's this little leaflet. And I pick it up and I look at the leaflet, and it's like, wow, I don't need this. Wow. And a couple of years down the line, I know about 10% of what the iPhone can do, but I feel better about it, right? So it's about that emotional context you put into it, and it's about knowing whether that emotion is something your users appreciate.
How would you describe the difference between working on an abstract experience project like the AutoStat project compared to the ones with a very specific purpose like the other two?
Well, I would say that the clearer it is what the goal with the application is, the easier it is to follow up on that goal. But I mean, in the case of Wolfsburg, so AutoStat, the case was actually also quite clear. It might seem abstract, but it was still very, very clear. Volkswagen have these particular values that we want to show and to emit to the end user. We want to user connect, and we want the end user to leave with a feeling, this new car smell feeling in their nostrils. We don't really necessarily want them to stand up there and go, "Yay, I won! Oh, that was fun! Oh, I had a lot of fun!" But we want them to leave with this feeling of, that was new car smell, right? That was something that was important to us while we built this. Whereas with the other one, we pretty quickly identified that the big challenge was to make that simulation immersive and believable for the target audience, and the target audience was pretty damn particular because they spent their daily work lives on that boat, and we had to sort of convince them that the virtual version was as real as the real version, and as scary. So for that project, we actually sent our graphic artists to the boat and spent some hours there with the crew, and took about 4,000 reference pictures that we then spent the next 2 years modeling about 30% of the ferry based on that. So that was a lot more difficult, even though to some extent it was more clear what we wanted to achieve. In my triangle of needs, well, in the bottom, because in the case, if you can actually solve what you want to solve in an efficient way by showing a video, then that's probably a good idea. It's probably a smarter idea than making an application. And as I said, this efficiency element is more important than the other elements on top of that. Also, the usability is, to me, less important than the efficiency. Or well, it's also important, but it can't compromise the efficiency. So, any other questions? Then thank you.